After the trials of the Pomodoro technique and the 2-minute rule, the protagonist is beginning to gain a sense of control over their distractions. But the battle for focus is far from over. While they now have the tools to manage time, something still feels off. It's as though they've won a few skirmishes, but the war is ongoing. Each day brings new distractions, new temptations, and new forces that threaten to undo their progress. It's in this moment of frustration that the protagonist learns of another powerful strategy: pre-commitment. The idea is deceptively simple. Before starting a task, set up your environment in a way that eliminates potential distractions. Pre-commitment isn't about willpower or forcing yourself to focus in the heat of the moment. It's about setting yourself up for success long before the task begins, creating an environment where distractions have little room to grow. The concept of pre-commitment strikes a chord with the protagonist. They realize that the constant barrage of distractions isn't just an external problem, it's also an internal one. Their environment, their habits, and the people around them have all contributed to the cycle of interruptions. By pre-committing, they can finally take control. They'll stop waiting for the perfect moment to focus and start creating that moment themselves. Eager to give it a try, the protagonist begins the process of pre-commitment. They start by locking away their phone, turning off unnecessary notifications, and clearing their workspace of any non-essential items. They even go so far as to set up a playlist of soothing background music that will help them focus. They plan out every step of their day in advance, setting aside specific blocks of time for deep work. The plan is in motion. For the first time, they feel as though they've finally cracked the code. If they can control their environment, they can control their focus. The first few days are a revelation. Tasks that once seemed impossible now feel manageable. Without the constant interruptions of social media, emails, or texts, the protagonist dives deep into their work. The rhythm of pre-commitment, creating a calm, distraction-free environment before even starting, gives them a sense of power. The more they commit, the more productive they become. It feels almost effortless. They are working smarter, not harder, and the rewards begin to show. Projects get completed, goals are met, and for the first time in ages, they feel a sense of control over their life. But as the days go by, something unexpected happens. A sense of complacency begins to creep in. The protagonist, who has been carefully curating their environment to protect their focus, starts to relax their boundaries. One day, they allow themselves to leave the phone on their desk, telling themselves that they won't be distracted by it. Another day, they skip setting up their workspace, thinking they'll be fine without the extra step. Slowly, their commitment begins to slip, and with it, their focus. It's a subtle change, barely noticeable at first, but the consequences are profound. The distractions return, slowly at first, then with increasing frequency. A phone call from a friend, a spontaneous conversation at work, a notification that seems too important to ignore. The distractions aren't the same ones from before, but they are distractions nonetheless. The protagonist begins to realize that while pre-commitment can create the perfect environment, it's still up to them to maintain their resolve. They must continue to pre-commit, to protect their focus, every single day. Without that mental discipline, the distractions are always waiting to slip back in. Just as they begin to feel the weight of their slipping focus, a new and unexpected force enters the scene: a close friend, someone they trust implicitly. This friend, who has always been a source of comfort and support, begins to sabotage the protagonist's focus, but not in the way they expected. Instead of overtly distracting them with casual conversation or interruptions, the friend offers subtle temptations. It begins innocently enough: an invitation to lunch, a friendly chat about a recent movie, a quick phone call. But the more these interruptions happen, the more the protagonist begins to realize that their friend is unknowingly becoming a major obstacle in their focus. At first, the protagonist tries to justify these distractions. It's just one conversation, they think. I can always get back to work. But soon, these small distractions add up, eroding the momentum they've carefully built. They start to feel torn between their commitment to focus and their loyalty to their friend. They wonder, Is it possible to protect their focus without alienating those they care about? This internal conflict builds as the protagonist faces the growing tension between their desire for deep focus and their relationships with others. It's no longer just about eliminating distractions from the environment. It's about setting boundaries with people, learning to say no, even to those they love, in order to preserve their focus. The protagonist faces the painful realization that in order to maintain the focus they've worked so hard to cultivate, they must sometimes choose their own needs over the desires of others. It's a lesson in balance, in learning that pre-commitment isn't just about the environment. It's about setting boundaries in all areas of life, even in relationships. In a moment of clarity, the protagonist confronts their friend, explaining the importance of focus and the need to protect their time. It's a difficult conversation, one that feels like a betrayal of sorts, but it's also a necessary one. They set firm boundaries, explaining that while their friendship is important, they must prioritize their work and their personal growth. The friend, though initially hurt, begins to understand. This conversation marks a turning point for the protagonist, as they learn that protecting focus means making hard choices and standing firm in the face of distractions, no matter where they come from. By the end of this chapter, the protagonist has learned a powerful lesson. Pre-commitment is not a one-time action. It's a continuous, evolving process that requires not only managing the external environment, but also the internal pressures and relationships that can threaten focus. It's a delicate balance, one that will continue to evolve as they progress on their journey. The protagonist now understands that true success lies not just in creating a distraction-free environment, but in maintaining the discipline and resolve to protect their focus day in and day out. As the protagonist becomes more adept at mastering focus through techniques like the Pomodoro technique and pre-commitment, they begin to feel like they're finally on the right path. Their productivity has skyrocketed, their tasks are being checked off, and they have a renewed sense of control over their life. But just when they think they have everything figured out, they discover a new enemy, one that's lurking in the shadows of their success: multitasking. At first, multitasking seems like a solution, not a problem. After all, if one can juggle multiple tasks at once, surely that must mean they are accomplishing more, right? With all the tools they've accumulated to focus and manage time effectively, surely they can handle a bit of multitasking. What could go wrong? It starts innocently enough. The protagonist tries to juggle two tasks at once, responding to emails while working on an important project. They reason that by doing both at the same time, they're maximizing their efficiency. A few emails answered here, a couple of sentences written there. Surely this will save them time in the long run. But almost immediately, things start to unravel. They find themselves getting lost in their emails, distracted by a message that requires a more thoughtful response than they had expected. Meanwhile, the important project they were working on sits neglected in the background. Every time they try to return to it, they realize they've forgotten where they left off, having been pulled away by yet another email or task. It's a vicious cycle. The protagonist becomes acutely aware that they're no longer fully present in any of the tasks they're doing. They're spreading themselves thin, never truly diving deep into any single task. But the real danger begins when they try to take on more than they can handle. They're not just responding to emails anymore, they're taking phone calls, checking social media for updates, and making quick to-do lists for other projects. What started as 2 tasks quickly escalates to a dozen, and the protagonist feels as though they are in a constant state of switching between tasks, never fully engaging with any of them. The more they try to multitask, the less productive they become. Their mind, once sharp and focused, feels like it's constantly flipping through pages of a book, unable to settle on one chapter for long. The more they try to manage it, the worse it gets. They're no longer just avoiding distractions, they're actively creating them. The constant shifting between tasks eats away at their mental energy, leaving them exhausted and frazzled. They find themselves making more mistakes, misplacing important details, and feeling like they're on the edge of burnout. The sense of control that they once had slips further out of reach. This is when the protagonist begins to learn the hard truth about multitasking. It's a myth. Despite popular belief, the human brain is not designed to handle multiple tasks at the same time. Instead, it switches rapidly between tasks, creating a false sense of productivity. This constant shifting takes a toll on cognitive resources, diminishing efficiency, and leading to cognitive fatigue. Studies have shown that multitasking actually reduces the quality of work, as it prevents the brain from fully engaging with any one task at a time. But what's even more unsettling is the realization that this multitasking trap is not just a productivity issue, it's a deeply ingrained habit. The protagonist starts to understand that they've been conditioned to believe that juggling tasks is a sign of efficiency, a badge of honor in a world that celebrates being busy. The pressure to do more, to be everywhere at once, is deeply rooted in the way society values productivity. And the more the protagonist tries to fight it, the more they feel overwhelmed by the demands on their time. In an attempt to regain control, the protagonist revisits the techniques they've learned so far. They begin to experiment with single tasking, allowing themselves to focus deeply on one task at a time. The results are almost immediate. They can focus more clearly, make fewer mistakes, and finish tasks more efficiently. The difference is stark. When they eliminate multitasking from their routine, their productivity soars. But the temptation to return to multitasking is never far away. In the middle of a deep work session, the protagonist's phone buzzes with a notification. The urge to check it, to just quickly glance at it, lurks in the background, pulling at their focus. They're tempted to quickly finish a task while simultaneously preparing for a meeting or answering another email. It's a constant battle to remind themselves of the dangers of multitasking. They begin to set stricter boundaries to protect their focus. No phone during work hours, no checking social media unless it's part of a specific task. And most importantly, no jumping between tasks unless absolutely necessary. It's a struggle at first, but over time, they start to see the benefits of single tasking: deeper concentration, better quality of work, and a profound sense of accomplishment at the end of the day. However, the protagonist also realizes something crucial. This battle with multitasking is a continuous one. It's not enough to simply avoid multitasking for a few days or weeks. It requires constant vigilance and self-awareness. The world around them will always encourage multitasking, whether through constant notifications or the pressure to do more in less time. But the protagonist now knows that the key to maintaining focus and productivity lies in the ability to resist the temptation to multitask, to slow down, focus deeply on one thing, and give it their full attention. In the end, the protagonist learns that the multitasking trap isn't just about managing tasks, it's about managing their own mindset. The more they accept that focusing on one task at a time is not only okay but necessary, the easier it becomes to avoid the distractions that multitasking brings. They reclaim their focus, their productivity, and ultimately their peace of mind. As the protagonist begins to fine-tune their focus techniques, learning to manage their time and energy with tools like the Pomodoro technique and pre-commitment, they realize that their journey toward mastering focus isn't just about managing time. It's about managing their environment. For the first time, they realize that distractions don't just come from their own mind, they are deeply intertwined with the physical spaces around them. Every messy desk, every cluttered workspace, and every pile of unfinished tasks is like a visual reminder of everything that's wrong in their world. It's as though their environment is constantly shouting, demanding their attention. In a moment of clarity, the protagonist stumbles upon a powerful concept: visual cues. These are simple, deliberate elements in their environment, images, objects, or reminders that guide the brain's focus and attention. They've heard of how clean, organized spaces can enhance productivity, but now they begin to understand that these cues are more than just aesthetic choices. They're psychological tools that can either foster focus or disrupt it. The protagonist's first step is simple. They clear their workspace. They remove unnecessary papers, close browser tabs that are irrelevant to their work, and set a specific task in front of them. The desk is now a blank canvas awaiting their undivided attention. It feels like a fresh start. They set up a to-do list right in front of them, visually organizing what needs to be done. Each item on the list serves as a visual cue, a small but significant reminder of their priorities. For the first time, they begin to feel like they have a system, a set of simple visual triggers that will keep them on track. They also experiment with using motivational images and quotes. The protagonist finds themselves pinning a small image of their long-term goal, maybe a picture of the vacation they're saving up for, a representation of their dream project, or a visual that reminds them of their why. They place it right in front of their work area where it can't be ignored. The idea is that every time their gaze shifts from the task at hand, it lands on something that inspires them, something that aligns their work with their personal goals. Initially, the results are nothing short of magical. Their focus sharpens in ways they couldn't have imagined. The clutter, both physical and mental, starts to dissipate. The task feels less like an overwhelming chore and more like a clear and manageable objective. They feel driven, energized, and in control. As the days go by, the protagonist becomes more intentional with their use of visual cues. They create a dedicated space for focus work, one that's free from distractions, filled only with items that help guide them toward their goals. But as with any tool, the visual cues begin to show their darker side. The once peaceful, serene workspace now feels like a pressure cooker. The motivational quotes that once inspired them now seem to loom over them, an unrelenting reminder of everything they still have to accomplish. The carefully chosen images begin to feel like a weight rather than a motivator. Instead of providing clarity, they start to induce stress. It's as though the act of visually confronting their goals and tasks has become a source of anxiety rather than inspiration. The protagonist's environment, which was once their greatest ally, now feels like an oppressive force. Every glance at the to-do list is a reminder of what still needs to be done, of the tasks they've left unfinished. The once liberating action of organizing their workspace feels like an unspoken challenge, an invitation to look at everything that's wrong, everything that's yet to be completed. The images that once inspired them now feel like looming reminders of their inadequacies. Instead of sparking motivation, they now spark self-doubt. In a moment of frustration, the protagonist steps back and reevaluates. They realize that the issue isn't with the visual cues themselves, it's with the pressure they've placed on them. They've set themselves up for success, but in doing so, they've also set themselves up for failure. The visual cues have become part of a larger mental game, a game that's based on perfectionism, where the only acceptable outcome is completion. Each task that remains unfinished feels like a failure, a judgment on their ability to stay focused. The once positive tool of visual reminders has now become a source of stress. In this moment of self-reflection, the protagonist comes to a powerful realization. Focus isn't about perfection, it's about progress. They understand that they've been using their visual cues to measure their worth, equating every completed task with success and every unfinished task with failure. But true productivity isn't about completing everything. It's about moving forward, even if it's one small step at a time. The images and lists they've set up are meant to guide them, not pressure them. The protagonist decides to simplify. They strip away some of the images that had caused stress and replace them with calming, neutral reminders. The to-do list becomes a gentle guide, not a source of judgment. They allow themselves more room for flexibility, for mistakes, and for the natural ebb and flow of productivity. They begin to realize that the visual cues, while powerful, need to be used with balance and care. In the end, the protagonist learns that visual cues are more than just physical tools, they're psychological ones. The power they hold depends on how they are perceived. The cues that inspire and motivate can also overwhelm and create pressure. True focus, the protagonist understands, comes not just from organizing the external environment, but from managing the internal environment as well. The emotions, the expectations, and the mindset that guide their actions. With this new understanding, the protagonist uses visual cues not as tools of pressure, but as gentle nudges, guiding them back to focus when the distractions of the world begin to creep in again.